G'day, Starlo here. I've hit the water this afternoon to test a prototype of a new resin head jig that my son Tom is making as part of his Starlotackle range. Now, I know a lot of you are already big fans of his resin heads for their soft plop when they land in the water and their slow sink rate and their long hang time, but we've been getting asked a lot to come up with a snag-proof and weedless design for the resin heads, and Tom's been working on that on these extra wide gape worm style hooks. Now, we're not entirely happy with this first prototype. We think we can improve on the keeper system for attaching the soft plastic, but I just wanted to come out this afternoon and try them out and see how the whole principle works. If you've never fished snag-proof or weedless before, it is really a fascinating way to work a soft plastic. I'm just going to put a cut down squidgy wriggler on this one. It's worth just taking a little while to get it right. And what you want to end up with is that. A plastic rigged on a wide gape hook where the point of the hook is flush with the back of the soft plastic. That really reduces the number of hang-ups and snags that you get and the amount of weed and other stuff that you pick up on the hook. It means you can throw it into places you couldn't possibly throw a standard jig head rig. Now, of course, you're going to miss a few fish rigging this way. The same thing that makes it snag resistant makes it fish resistant. But because you can throw it into places where you couldn't throw any other rig, you get a lot more hits and you will get fish out of places and on days when you wouldn't otherwise. And I think this might be one of them today. We've had a lot of rain, the water's dirty and very cold, and I expect the bream to be quite shut down. I think I'm going to need to put it right back in the snags, and that's where this rig comes into its own. Let's see if we can find a few and christen Tom's new weedless snag-proof resin head jigs.
Because I know the fishing is going to be really tough this afternoon, I understand that I'll need to get my squidgy plastic right back in there against the bank and in amongst the snags, and then fish it slowly and painstakingly. Hits are most likely to come in the first metre or two of the retrieve, so once I get that far out, I simply crank the lure in and cast it again. I wanted to spend the maximum amount of time right in that narrow strike zone. That's what's going to give me my best chance of success. Near enough isn't going to be good enough today, and I'll need to really concentrate on what I'm doing. Oh, it's hard work. The other thing I know is that while the lure's in the zone, it needs to move slowly to give those shut down fish a chance to see it and, hopefully, grab it. The slower sink rates and longer hang times of the resin heads really help with this. This certainly isn't a game for the impatient. Of course, putting it right back in there means that you will occasionally cast over a low branch, as I've just done. But I know I can still work the plastic back in there, then crawl it up over the branch and let it plop straight back down into prime country. It'd be pretty tricky to do that with a standard head and an exposed hook point. But despite my best efforts, an hour or more of careful casting and slow retrieves only yields a couple of very half-hearted taps. So I keep moving. It'll happen eventually. Watch my line.
Yeah, oh, good bite. Good bite. Look at that. Ooh, he pulled it right off the keeper. Alright, that's the most aggressive bite I've had this afternoon from these very shut down fish. So maybe we'll come back and have another go. Quite possibly not. the way they are today. Alright, let's get it in there again. Oh, that's a good cast. That deserves a fish. Oh, and it got a bite too. Watch the line twitch on the surface. There might be a couple in there, but you've got to get it right in there. Oops, that might be too far. No, that's the spot. Oh, they're so timid and so shut down. It's ridiculous. This is about as hard as bream get. The bites are like a mosquito flying into your line. They are so soft. Those ones have wised up to me, I think. I'll have one more go in there. Good spot.
But sometimes even the snag-proof rig hangs up in the submerged timber. Damn it.
Probably best to describe them as snag resistant rather than snag proof. You are still going to get the occasional snag, but this is my first one this afternoon. What often happens is they get jammed in the fork of a stick or something like that rather than the hook actually penetrating the timber. So it's usually pretty easy to get them off if you just come in quietly. Get on the other side. Yep, it just came straight out. It was in the fork of a branch. I'd have been snagged at least 6 or 8 times by now using a standard jig head setup, and I would have lost a couple of lures. So it works.
And so sometimes there's a lure change. I've decided to switch to a squidgy prawn on the Weedless resin head to see if that makes a difference. It looks pretty good to me. Check that drag again and get it back in there. I'm not beaten yet. How good does that nook under the tree trunk look? Surely there's got to be a bream lurking in there. But to tempt it, I'll need to be right on the money, and that means actually hitting the timber and letting the lure drop straight down into the shadow underneath it. Watch my line again.
Oh, that was a good bite. That was a good bite. Oh, you don't get them all on the Weedless. That is the drawback.
Did you see that subtle twitch in the line? Here it is again in slow motion. Watch closely. There. Sometimes that's all the indication you'll get. No use crying over missed bream though. Best to keep moving and keep probing. It will happen. Okay, maybe this snag. Watch the belly of line again.
Yep. Oh, slow pickup. He's a good fish though. Oh, they're going to be hard work today, I think. Dirty, cold water, and they're really shut down there. Right in underneath cover. Would not have been able to get that plastic in front of that fish without the snag-proof head. I actually crawled it through the timber. Pretty fish. Look at that. Beautifully pinned though. Settle down, mate. It's the one thing about the wide gape worm hooks. When you do get a hook up, it tends to be really solid and you don't drop too many. Alright, that's a start.
Unfortunately, it was also the end, and I didn't get another bream that session, which meant several days passed before I could get out again to try the weedless resin heads, this time in the boat.
I seem to have been doing more than my fair share of foul weather fishing lately, and today is certainly no exception. It's been raining torrentially for the best part of a week, and we've got some minor and mid-range flooding happening in most of the systems. The water is the colour of chocolate milk, and it's come up heaps. It's going to come up more, which is why I shot out for a quick fish. But right now, I want to get this into some snags, see if the bream can find it in this filthy water, and see if I can extract a couple. I've beefed up my gear a little bit. I've gone for the 2500 size reel for a bit more cranking power. I've got a 10-pound leader. I'm just about going to lock the drag. We'll see if we can haul the big black bream out of some really gnarly country, and I hope that rain holds off.
The rain didn't hold off, but at least it stayed fairly light. However, while I deeply probed some great-looking snags, I just couldn't draw a bite from a bream, despite working my soft plastic as slowly and carefully in the dirty water as I possibly could. It's almost impossible to go too slow in a situation like this. You really need to keep that softie in there, working its magic for as long as possible. Then get it back in there again, and even if you go over the timber, you can usually work a weedless or snag-proof rig back out without hanging it up. But I was clearly wasting my effort. Time for a move down towards the mouth of the system in the hope of finding some cleaner water and perhaps some more active fish. It certainly couldn't be any worse than it was here. I did find some slightly clearer water too, and eventually a willing fish, although it wasn't to be a bream. A chopper tailer, and very neatly pinned too. Geez, those hooks are sharp. It really pays to check your leader carefully after a tailer. Sure enough, mine had a nick and I retied it, which was just as well because a cast or two later I was on again. This one didn't feel like a tailer. Maybe a bream? No, it's a pinky.
Little snapper. Would be just about legal too. I'll let him go. He's pinned beautifully on that weedless hook. Gorgeous. Wow, once they get in, they don't want to come out.
Straighten the tail up and back into it. Although I'm doing something here that the weedless or snag-proof head wasn't really designed for, casting out into relatively deep open water. Now I'm giving the slow-sinking lure plenty of time to get down and swing with the tidal flow, just gently lifting and dropping it in the current, staying in touch to feel for any tap or pickup. Again, notice just how gently and slowly I'm tweaking that plastic. Barely enough movement to get its tail wriggling, but often that's all it takes. You'd be surprised just how slowly you can fish these things.
yes. Oh, that's not a bad fish. This is really interesting. This is not what these weedless or snag-proof heads were designed for at all. I'm just bouncing them along the bottom out there. I could easily use a proper jig head, but it's interesting to see what sort of hookup rate I get. And this one is a tailer. So he may bite me off. Yeah, it looks like he's got it fairly deep too. Oh no, I got him. Not a bad tailer either. Oh, the plastic's gone. But look how securely those wide gape hooks pin a fish. It's just amazing. Once they're on, they don't usually get off.
Nice. Not a bad result on a very tough day. I'd definitely seen enough by now to know that Tom was onto something with these new Starlotackle weedless resin heads. He's since refined the design considerably by upgrading the keeper system to an articulated pin that works extra well, and it's much easier to rig. Tom's also added a second deluxe version with a sliding tungsten weight on the hook shank ahead of an adjustable stopper, and it works a treat. Look, weedless or snag-proof rigs aren't the perfect choice in every scenario, but where they work best, they outfish just about any other approach, and they pull fish from places that'd otherwise be virtually unfishable. If you want to find out more about them, go to Tom's Starlotackle pages on Facebook or Instagram and check out his online shop at the URL shown here. And until next time, this is Starlo wishing you tight lines.